Innocent victims are a priority for the DUP, and we are honoured to support Alan Black, the sole survivor of the Kingsmill Massacre, and the family of John McConville in their quest for truth and justice. On the 4th of October, Mr Black has had to issue a second pre-application protocol letter on the office of the Police Ombudsman to try to secure the report into Kingsmills. Each time having to use money he has saved to pay for his funeral. And to date, there is still no response. It is appalling that some 48 years after this most brutal, callous and sectarian of murders that caused embarrassment even for the IRA, that to get to the truth, these families are still having to fight the very systems that were set up to help and support them. Mr Black is now 81 and in poor health. He has endured an 8-year inquest which frankly raised more questions than provided answers. And as a result, he has pinned his hopes for getting the truth on the Police Ombudsman's report, but he fears he may not live to see it. This matter should have been resolved and the report issued as soon as the inquest was over. Bear in mind the initial complaint was made in 2013. And here we are, 6 months after the conclusion of the inquest, and there is still no report, despite numerous and repeated requests from the family solicitors and elected representatives, including ourselves. This is no way to treat innocent victims. It is shameful. And just because the Police Ombudsman's Office can take until the 30th of April 2025 to produce the report doesn't mean they should. Running down the clock on this is completely unacceptable and will leave the families no avenue to pursue the questions they may have arising from any published report. The Police Ombudsman must release this report without further delay, and I would call on the Department of Justice and the Secretary of State to intervene to ensure this happens.
Dear God.
Take a deep breath.
I'm now 81. I've been on this journey for a long, long time, over 48 years. From the start of the inquest, it's been almost 10 years. Karen, her sisters and me, we fought long and hard. My health isn't good. I have to get this report out because I don't want to go to my grave owing the boys. And they are calling out for justice and they should get justice. And why the Ombudsman's Office is doing this, on me in particular as in bad health, I just do not know. It's cruel. It really is cruel.
On the 5th of January 1976, we sat in the house. You could have set the clock by John coming home from work. He was always in at the same time every night. That night was totally different. We waited. 10 minutes later, still no sign of John. 15 minutes later, my parents were sort of getting quite concerned because he was never late. News flash came on the television to say that there had been a shooting involving a minibus. There was no more details than that. So my mum asked my dad to go out and phone the police station to find out, was that incident concerning the Kingsmill bus? I think even at those very initial moments of hearing that, I think we basically knew that it was the bus that John was on. We just instinctively knew it was the bus. My dad came back and he said, the police can tell us nothing. They don't have any details. So basically Mum then said to my dad, well, take me up to Mrs. McWhirter's house because her husband was on the bus as well. So Mum asked me to stay in the house with my two sisters. Tanya was 11 and Mandy was 17. I was 18. I turned on the radio in the kitchen and a bit more detail came out. And it was the fact that there was a shooting So I then immediately went up to my uncle's house to ask him to take me into Daisy Hill Hospital, because I knew that's where we had to be. All the family members were there. I recognised so many. I mean, it was just so emotional just being in the hospital that night. Word got round that there was one survivor. We didn't know who it was, so everybody just waited. And then all I could see was Mr. Nixon coming over and held my mother. He was the Presbyterian minister. He held my mother by the shoulders, so I knew John was gone. John went to work that morning. He enjoyed his work, but he didn't come home. He didn't come home again. And we were left with basically no answers. Even sort of those first few weeks, we were reading information in the newspapers, any details we got from newspapers. Nobody from any position of, whether it was security, government, nobody came to tell us anything. And that's how we lived with Kingsmills for a long time. And you just basically had to try and live with what had happened. And it was very, very difficult. And it still is to this day. Because John had plans. John had plans to go to a college and to study, for to be a missionary or just wherever that was going to take him. It was difficult for my parents as well, especially my mum, because she tried her best to, sort of get some answers, but we never did. So that went on for years until we got an inquest. The inquest certainly hasn't answered all of the questions that we hoped that it would. For a number of weeks we sat in there, and for almost 8 years on and off, it has been difficult because we could see that there was information that they were unwilling to give us. And we watched that play out in the court. The Police Ombudsman report is something that we asked for as a family, because you think that these things are set in place so that you can turn to them at the very worst time in your life, that these people should be there to give answers. But here we are waiting 6 months after the end of the inquest, and the coroner did say that we should get the hearing or the Ombudsman's report as soon as the inquest was over. Now, that's 5.5 months ago. And we were told by one of the investigators that our report was actually finished. It was completed a couple of years ago, isn't that right? 2020. So why the hold-up? Why are they not handing it over? That's what we want to know. Because at the end of the day, we're entitled to have that report.